Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're very excited to kick off the second session in our three-part webinar series with Access Legal, the Fair Practice Consultation, a client-centered approach to retain 3 to 4 times more clients. I am very proud to introduce our partners from Access Legal, Dave Ahrens, Jen Johnson, and James Bogate, along with Grant and Max Nuttall, representing 8am, and Grant is with Access Legal. We're excited to dive into today's conversation. So without further ado, I will turn it over to the team. Over to you, Dave.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Amanda. And Brittany, thank you so much for this webinar series because it's a very timely series for sure. I mean, everyone has been seeing how much AI and technology is completely shifting and evolving the legal industry at this time. And so this workshop series, if you weren't present on the first one, is really designed to give you the tools and the guidance that you need to make the adaptations where if you can do so successfully and implement technology, you can really position your firm to thrive financially in this modern era. I mean, the efficiencies of the platform that 8am iCase offers here, combined with the fair practice model, which we'll be talking about here in a little bit more short order than last time around, can really enable you to open up your practice to a huge market of clients that are currently underserved. So we'll be getting into that in just a minute, but I also want to just stress the fact that we do CLE workshops, as I shared on the last one. This is not a CLE. This workshop series is entirely focused on providing you with the tools and resources you need to thrive financially. It's a business model focused, technology focused webinar series that is here to provide you as much guidance as we can to make sure that you're able to implement these new tools, implement AI, and position your firm to thrive. So on our last series, we went into some detail on the fair practice model itself. If you haven't watched that, haven't seen that webinar, we will be sending out the recordings for this webinar, the previous webinar as well, which kind of overview the fair practice model and the way in which attorneys are using technology to do that very, very efficiently and very profitably. And this webinar specifically is going to be focused on the fair practice consultation, which is, okay, so we have some understanding about how to provide a more accessible business model. How do we actually deliver that on a consultation? How do we explain this to clients and help them understand how it is that attorneys that provide this model of service are different than maybe the traditional model of representation, how it is that we can provide them with an accessible solution that can enable them to move forward straight away. And ultimately, as we're describing here, for attorneys that implement this fair practice model and learn how to do so on the consultation, they're typically retaining 3 to 4 times as many clients as the traditional model approach. And then using the legal technology that Max and the 8am iCase team are going to be presenting a little bit later, will show you how you're able to very seamlessly process payments, get access to the potential clients, then process payments, set them up for scheduled payments, recurring payments, and then have your fee agreement signed digitally in a very seamless way. So that's going to be the focus of the presentation for today is, how do you 3 to 4x your consultation conversion rate with the fair practice model and the tools that are available with the 8am iCase. But before we get into that, we're going to provide a little bit of an overview, just in case you missed the first workshop. Mr. Bogate is going to be overviewing the market opportunity. Before I get into that, just like to make some quick introductions. First of all, my name is Dave Ahrens. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Access Legal. I'm very pleased to be joined by Mrs. Jen Johnson, who is the co-director of our education team. And Mrs. Johnson is also the former president of the Mississippi Bar and has been leading the charge on providing this education alongside Mr. James Bogate as well, who is also the co-director of our education team and head of attorney partnerships here at Access Legal. Both of them are very experienced attorneys and also very passionate about presenting this unique service model to attorneys like yourself that are taking seriously how to reposition your firm for this modern era. So Jen and James, very pleased to have you with us today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you.
And we are also thankfully joined by Mr. Max Nuttall from the 8am iCase team, who's going to be demoing a lot of the elements of the platform that make the enrollment aspect of the fair practice consultation very seamless. So Max, thanks for being with us today as well.
Thanks, Dave. Glad to be here.
And then we are grateful to be joined by Mr. Grant McMullen, who is one of our lead engineers here at Access Legal, who's going to be demonstrating the integration that Access Legal has with MyCase, 8am MyCase, which enables us to deliver potential clients right into your 8am MyCase account in real time. So, Grant, I appreciate you being with us today as well.
Yep, absolutely a pleasure. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Dave.
All right. So let's start with a brief overview of what we covered on the first part of the Fair Practice Workshop series, which has to do with the market opportunity, which is a wide open possibility for all attorneys that are here to implement technology and then reposition the way in which they deliver services to open themselves up to a large volume of people that are really needing legal services in this country, but unfortunately aren't able to receive it with the traditional model. So, Mr. Bogate, if you could give us an overview of the market opportunity we are seeing for attorneys today.
Of course, thanks, Dave. And just to hit on the importance of even just repeating this information. Most of this webinar series is focused on the use of tools, right? And, the most effective and efficient way to use these tools that are available to us. It's a, age-old tenet of construction. We also need to understand the job, right? And what we're facing and the challenges that we're trying to overcome by utilizing these tools. So to understand that better, I want to show just illustrate a trend in the access to legal representation, access to justice. What this really depicts for us, though, as lawyers running our own businesses, is client flow, access to client market share, right? So 50 years ago, 99% of people that needed legal representation are able to get it. Our business is thriving, fish are jumping in the boat, as they say. But if you look 50 years later, only 22% of people that need representation are able to actually access it. And so when we take a look at some of the barriers that are at play, the traditional way of offering services mandates large upfront, lump sums of money. And then that on a repeated basis, typically a $5,000 to $10,000 retainer or a deposit. And, then whenever your retainer is depleted, then they need to refill that, which is $4,000 to $8,000, often in perpetuity. So we're simultaneously seeing this business dry up in our industry, clients not able to access our services, which is having catastrophic results, by the way. If you're paying attention to the news, you're seeing out there that some states are pushing to, let, non-attorneys, people without law degrees, practice law. And I mean, do family law trials and engage in legal services. That's just one thing on the spectrum that's being affected by, the access to representation drying up as it is, but also just from a business perspective, we're losing future value of the case at this place where they have to do their refill provision, right? Even if they can come up with the initial retainer. And then when we look at how closely this is tied to income demographics, right? 22% of the people are getting the help they need. 20% of the population are high income earners. So we can very safely say we've kind of slipped into this place where we're more of a luxury profession than a staple of our society that people can go to for relief, right? And so why is that? How do the income demographics tie to that? Well, if we're asking for large, upfront sums of money regularly, who can do that? Only the high income earners. They have between $4,000 and $40,000 cash on hand at any given time, and obviously make great income. But what we're neglecting as a profession, what we're not reaching out a hand to help and pull into our offices and let them gain access to our service, are these middle income earners. It's most of who we know. They're accountants and teachers, and most of the people in our socioeconomic circles fall into this. They make great money. They live in nice neighborhoods and nice homes. They drive nice cars. Their kids go to private school sometimes. They lead somewhat comfortable lives. But if you look at this is from the Pew Research Institute. These are just cold numbers. They only have $1,000 to $4,000 cash on hand. So when our initial demands are $5,000 to $10,000, and then in perpetuity, this is annually $1,000 to $4,000 cash on hand. So what we look at here is this the magnitude of this business opportunity. This is 171 million people that are trying to gain access to our offices, but because of how we have traditionally done business, we're not giving them the opportunity to do so. So all of the tools we're looking at in this webinar series, the My Case tools, the Access Legal tools, they're all designed to help not only service that 20%, which of course we all love that business that can just come in and put the money on the barrelhead and you don't have to worry about that, but also that population that has the money, they're just looking for alternative solutions, right? That translates into $1 trillion a year or more opportunity in this legal field. There are clients just waiting for you to reach out and dip your hand into that ocean and pull them into your office. And so much of this is how to do that, right? And our solution for this is the FAIR practice model. FAIR stands for financially accessible, innovative representation. This is about helping people get access to your firm, not discounting your fees, not giving away your services. This is about being able to charge what you normally charge, but make that accessible to the average working American that can come in for a reasonable deposit that are within those liquid assets that we showed you in the income demographics, and then use the power of their income to maintain the rest of their services. And this isn't something that we sat around and dreamed up to bring to you today. This is something that's been developed over 20 years. We have over 4,000 attorneys in our network. Mr. Ahrens is an incredibly resourceful, forward-thinking CEO, where when we have attorneys in our network that are doing 6 figures a month and absolutely, having explosive growth, he goes to their city, puts a microphone in their face and says, please tell the rest of the network what you're doing to have this level of success. Take 15, 20 years of that mechanism, and then we've aggregated that success in those strategies and then put that into the FAIR practice model to be able to deliver back to the legal profession. So this is something that is tried and true. Over 2 million clients have been a benefit of attorneys offering these services. Our lawyers have seen 4 to 5 times the client growth and revenue in their firms. There's a 90% collection rate utilizing this methodology, because part of it does have to do with, automated payments, and over $1 billion in generated revenue for our service. And just very quickly, again, FAIR stands for financially accessible, innovative representation. When we're talking about financial accessibility, what we're talking about is typically offering either, full representation on automated recurring payments, where you're using the power of technology to set automated recurring payments on their payday for amounts that they can afford, and then limited scope representation strategically as a business decision, where you're either offering limited appearances on a phase-by-phase basis and capitalizing on much higher effective hourly rates, or just offering discrete tasks where you're not doing an appearance, but you're getting them some help. And Attorney Johnson's going to talk about that a lot in a little bit, just getting them some help other than none and increasing your ROI in the process of doing that. And just, the way full representation on automated payments looks in our system is very straightforward. You're looking at initial retainers between $1,500 and $2,500 that are in line with their economics, the type of income they have and the money they have on hand, and $125 to $250 a week payments on their payday. That is so critical. On their payday, it removes the deprioritization that they sometimes engage in. It's a trade-off. Hey, I'll let you in the door for this more reasonable price. You work with me. We're not going to chase you. You put down a card, you put down an automated payment method, and just leave that active, and it's a set it and forget it, right? And then the other aspect of this is limited scope representation, which usually manifests itself in flat fees, whether we're talking about the phase by phase or the discrete tasks. Again, you're able to still offer the automated recurring payments, but they terminate usually once they hit the flat fee amount. And again, you're driving up your effective hourly rate and increasing your profitability doing so. So, the innovative representation aspect of this, the IR, This is just leveraging technology to increase your profitability, your efficiency, your efficacy, make your life easier, get some time back for you and your family, be able to increase your staff. That is everything that we're talking about here. That involves calendar, booking software, merchant services, which are such a critical aspect to this, which, ADM MyCase has been demonstrating and will continue to do so. E-sign capability, all of these things that are available within the suite that MyCase provides with client management and having all of these things under one roof. And then just the last part of this, not only AI powered tools from the client side or the attorney side, but remembering that clients will be using AI as well. Clients will be using AI to discern attorneys they can afford and move forward with and those they can't. So the fair practice model also stands you up as an attorney that, these language models will find and say, oh, they're for a fair practice attorney. They're more affordable to work with, and allow the client to seek you out that way and separate you. So more about the client side and how they come through and interact with this material and how we educate them. I'll throw it back over to Dave for that.
Fantastic. Thank you, James. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the most exciting aspects of this whole workshop series is that all of the tools on the innovation side, because it's so efficient and so streamlined, especially if you saw the previous the previous workshop we did, from the scheduled payments to the online intake and document automation. Anytime you're offering flat fees, limited scope, or any kind of flat fee work, for example, or when you're doing the full representation on automated recurring payments, all of these tools are just available at your fingertips. So the ADM MyCase platform, everything you see on the screen is available through the platform. So, and then of course, what we're going to describe here in just a moment is how we can also start bringing potential clients that are actually looking to hire attorneys that provide the fair practice model, which is brought in through our conversation intake system. That's also part of the same 8am MyCase ecosystem with the partnership through Access Legal, so we can bring those clients right into your platform and position you to enroll these clients and then deliver the services in a very efficient way. So I'm going to give a brief demonstration of the conversation intake system, which again, if you learned from, as Mr. Bogate was just sharing, the fair practice model, the main difference between that and the traditional model of representation is, our attorneys are not charging $5,000 to $10,000 up front. Typically for fair practice services, usually it's going to fall within a $500 to $2,500 range as a starting point, depending on whether it's a limited scope service, for the practice areas that applies, or if it's going to be full representation with that lower initial access point, automated recurring billing payments from there. And so that's the business model that we found over these last 20 years working with these thousands of firms that has enabled them to A, retain so many more clients by lowering that access point, and then B, by having the scheduled recurring payments to have that really high collection rate, which is really key. And so if this starts to make sense, you can see, hey, if I have these tools available to me and I can deliver services in this way and offer them at this price point to start, then this is where the partnership with us starts to really make a lot of sense, because our job and what we do here is we also educate the client. And we bring them in with the expectation, A, we kind of identify what the practice area they're needing assistance with, and also the jurisdiction, which is not easy to do. We have some new technology that enables us to better understand the practice area, as well as sets the expectation with the client of what they're actually going to be paying the attorney to get started, fair practice attorney, in most cases, which is that $500 to $2,500 range. So I'm going to do a quick screen share of our conversation intake system to give you an experiential example of what that actually looks like, and then we'll actually show you how the potential clients we deliver integrates right into your MyCase, into the ADM MyCase platform. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here on the intake system. Okay. Now, with traditional lead forms, when people would just describe their legal matter, it was oftentimes very difficult to understand, because the clients don't necessarily know the area of law, that they're needing assistance in. So if you ask them, if they say, hey, I'm needing help with, I need a family lawyer for my case because my father just passed away. Well, actually, no, you don't need a family law lawyer. You need a probate or a trust administration, a state attorney, right? And so they don't necessarily know what kind of assistance they need is. And so through our new intake system, we're actually able to have a conversation with the client and identify and ask clarifying questions to better understand the kind of lawyer that that person is needing, so that when we then connect it with the attorney that handles that region and jurisdiction, it's an attorney that we know services that area of law and not a different area. Right. And so, we actually engage in a conversation here. So it says, hey, tell us what you need legal help with. We'll connect you with a lawyer for a free consultation. So let's say they said, I need help with my father's estate. So if the client's needing help with their father's estate, that means they need an estate planning lawyer, right? Well, not necessarily, actually. Right? Because it could be that they need help with the father's estate, meaning they want to do the planning, but it also could mean that maybe their father passed away. So we need to get some clarification. So our agentic intake system is going to ask clarifying questions when it's necessary to make sure we have clarity about what practice area it needs to be. So for example, here it's saying, hey, has your father passed away or is he still living? If he's still living, estate planning attorney. If he's passed away, probably a probate attorney, right? And so from there, then once we ascertain the correct practice area for the case, then we're going to start asking clarifying questions around where the jurisdiction is likely to be. So for example, in this case, if their father has passed away, then the jurisdiction is going to be where they live, right? Well, more specifically, where do you need legal help? This would typically be where your father lived at the time of his passing. Right? Because if the person that's seeking legal assistance lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, but their father lived in Raleigh, North Carolina when they passed away, well, they need an attorney in Wake County. So by giving them the prompts and kind of providing them the context about where the attorney is likely to be needed based on the specific kind of legal matter needing assistance with, we can actually nail that jurisdiction a lot more often, which enables us to connect clients to the attorneys that handle that practice area as well as that jurisdiction in a much more accurate way, right? So in this case, we can put in Raleigh, North Carolina, because that's where the father lived. I'll give one more example of this. We just start over. So for example, in the context of a family law case, let's say I'm needing help with a divorce, right? Well, how do we determine the jurisdiction? At this point, if they say divorce, we know that's a family law case. So we don't really have to ask more questions, but where's the jurisdiction going to be, right? In order to figure out where the jurisdiction is likely to be for a divorce, well, we have to kind of know if they're going to need if they have children involved, right? And if they've been living apart, where's that jurisdiction going to be, right? So if I need help with a divorce, we got to find out, well, are there going to be children involved in this case? Okay, so we have to ask the clarifying question. Yes, there are children involved. So then typically that means we have to ask the question that says, hey, where do you need legal help? This will typically be where the children primarily live, right? So because if you're separated and the kids have been living in San Antonio, Texas with the mother and you're in Austin, Texas, then where you typically would need the attorney for that divorce matter is going to be in San Antonio, Bexar County. Okay, so this is the kind of questions that we can ask now with this technology, this intake technology that enables us to have this conversation and get this clarifications to figure out, both the practice area itself, the correct practice area, as well as the correct jurisdiction based on the user's entries. I mean, they still rely on them to tell us, but to give them the context based on legal matter where that person is going to be needing the attorney. Then from that point forward, they say, okay, look, based on your response, sounds like you need a family law lawyer in San Antonio, which is Bexar County, Texas. We're going to connect with a lawyer free consultation, provide your details. So I'm just going to put in some example information here. No fine. Okay. And we also require them to opt in for text messages so that when we deliver the potential clients to our attorneys, they can respond to them via phone or text. Then we send that in. Now, before we process that as a potential client, we also have a conversation, inform the client about what they can expect to pay to get started with one of our fair practice attorneys. After consultation, if you decide to hire a lawyer, their starting fee will typically be between $500 to $2,500. And then payment plans are available from there, which again are powered by 8am MyCase and their payments, automated payment solution. So at this point, by the way, we lose about 20 to 30% of the clients, sometimes as high as 40% of the clients right here. And you can probably imagine why that is. A lot of folks that are just kind of kicking the tires, or don't have any money available to invest for an attorney, they just see that pricing point and they go, oh, I was actually just looking for a pro bono attorney, and they leave. And that's actually for you as an attorney, that's what you want, in the sense that you want clients that are actually, understand what the starting cost is going to be and are in a position to retain and pay that to get started with an attorney. If someone doesn't have the resources financially, you don't want to have that delivered to you as a potential client, right? That's one of the things we value the most at Access Attorney, is that the most valuable asset you have as an attorney is your time. And so our goal is to bring you potential clients that are pre-educated, already understand the potential costs. And then when our fair practice attorneys then deliver a service that directly matches exactly what we have then pre-educated the client on, that's why, most of our attorneys are retaining every second, third, or most, fourth client that they talk to. Because we have that education on the front end and then the attorneys matching that on the back end. Okay. So with that is the intake process. And then I'm going to go back to our demo here. That's it. Share screen. There we go. So that is the demonstration of our intake system. Once we have intaked that client and done our conversation verify process, educating about the expected starting cost, that potential client is then delivered directly into your 8am MyCase account, or into an 8am MyCase account in real time. It's also delivered into Access Legal. So if you don't have 8am MyCase at the moment, we can still deliver you potential clients. But part of what's so powerful about this partnership and this workshop we're co-presenting with 8am MyCase is that you can even have your potential clients being delivered right into your 8am MyCase software, so that you're acquiring the new clients and then working them in a very efficient way from that point forward. So with that, I'd like to ask Mr. McMullen to give us a demonstration of the integration that we have with 8am MyCase, so that once that client completes that intake process, how we can deliver it right into your 8am MyCase account in real time.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dave. So the first thing that you'll obviously have to do is once you've got your Access Legal account, you're going to need to authorize it to send the leads through to the clients through to your MyCase account. So you'll come here to your settings and integration. You'll see
Do you want to share
MyCase
your screen there,
integration.
Grant? I think it's on my share there.
Is it? I
No,
thought
we
I was
see
sharing.
Grant. I see Grant.
Oh, really?
Oh, okay.
Huh.
So then when you come to your integrations page, you'll see authorize MyCase, and this, if you are logged in, will authorize it. I'm currently logged in to MyCase, so it will authorize it. There we go. Otherwise, it may prompt you to obviously log in and then accept it, but that is all that's involved in setting up the connection between the two, trying to keep it as smooth and simple as possible. Now, when that's been authorized, if you come here to your 8am MyCase account and you come down to your Manage Pipeline, under Manage Pipeline, you will see online leads. If you come here and you don't, initially, you will see that it says you can set up an online lead form. None of this is required. This is all handled automatically through the integration. And then as your leads start to come through, as your leads are posted from our system into MyCase, you'll start to see them starting to appear here. So here, Emily Abbott's come through. I can see Emily Abbott's details. I can see phone number. I can see the email address. I can open this up. I can see the sources from Access Legal, area of lawyers family. They in Odessa, Florida, and then they're seeking a divorce and need legal support to secure custody of my children. Okay, so that then you can come along and you can approve it, or you can delete it if you require. But as you get more leads coming in, as you can see, the leads are coming in quite thick and fast here. You can do a multi-select, and then you can approve in effectively a bulk process. Once they're approved in that bulk process, so let's come along here and let's look at Emily Abbott here. Emily Abbott, I can see all of the details here, and I can say, okay, great, I'm going to approve this. This has now been moved to approved. And if I now come to my leads dashboard, no, not my leads dashboard, my pipeline, sorry. you'll see Emily Abbott is now here appearing in my leads, and I can then move it through the process of contacted, consult scheduled, and pending. And I'm going to pass it over because Max is going to take us through a little bit later on all the available options once that's happened. So I'm going to pass back to Dave for now, but that's as simple as integration is.
Yep, and as you can see here, AMI case has a lead management system, meaning you can put your new potential clients into, obviously integrated directly in real time. So as soon as the person submits the request and that intake and that verification is completed, it's populating right into your AMI case account. Then from there, you approve that and it goes right into your new leads pipeline, or you can set it up to go into whatever pipeline, however you want to name it. And then from there, as you start to begin your outreach, send your text messages, you can then follow up with the clients. You can move it into stages like, hey, I've made my first contact. Okay, we've got a consultation scheduled. Okay, we have a follow-up that needs to be done. And then, hey, we've got our first retained client. And then once you've retained that client, it'll give you the option to drop it in as a case, an ADMI case, which Max will give us a showcase of that here in just a little bit. So this now kind of sets us up. So now we've got the potential client in. You've received that potential client in your ADMI case platform. So now how do we approach that consultation from a fair practice model standpoint to enroll that client, turn that potential client into a paying client? And that's going to be the focus area of the rest of this workshop here. So Ms. Jen Johnson, would you want to take us through the core tenets and pillars of a fair practice consultation?
Absolutely. I'm glad to do that. So what we're going to talk about here for the next little bit is actually the beginning of a relationship with your clients. So at Access Legal, we help and educate our attorneys who work with us on how to give a fair practice consultation. And we're going to talk about it being a client-centered practice. We're going to talk about having an honest conversation about money. And then we're going to talk about detailed 7 steps to a successful consultation. So the first thing that we're going to touch on here today is the client-centered practice. Okay. So a client-centered practice is really all about developing the attorney-client relationship. And we talked about in the previous episode some of the ethical considerations that we have as it relates to the fair practice model. And here we are talking about being able to demonstrate our competence as an attorney to the potential client, being diligent in how we are approaching the client, and also having excellent communication skills. So these are some of the things that we really will focus on when we are educating on a consultation, because the consultation is the beginning. And if we can't have an excellent, successful consultation, there's no way we have a client to serve. So it's really important that we spend some really good time on learning how to be client-centered. I have practiced for 27 years now, and the thing that I hear so many times from my clients is, you listened. I hired you because you listened. You're the first person who allowed me to tell my story, and you didn't make me feel like I was inadequate. You listened to me. That is one of the most important foundational things we can do as attorneys is listen. These prospective clients that are coming in with a problem, with a financial problem and a legal problem. And we need to have an opportunity to really share with them and have them share with us what is on their mind and what they're needing help with. So we're going to have a really good conversation with them. We're going to get to know them just a little bit. They're going to get to know us, and they're going to get to feel comfortable with us so that we can continue having our consultation conversation that includes quoting fees. And it also will include a really good, clear, well-written retainer agreement. We want to make sure everyone is on the same page. So then in this consultation, we are definitely going to have an honest conversation about money. And I don't know about you all, but anytime I would get to the part about talking about my fee, I began to get a little bit uncomfortable. The clients would get uncomfortable. Nobody likes to talk about the money part of things. So what we need to do is just put everyone at ease when we get to the topic of money. Slow down. Make sure that everyone is on the same page and that you are really relying on that relationship that you have built from the very beginning. It's important for you as an attorney to know, do you have a source of income that is a regular source of income? Ask the question, allow them to answer. Ask them how often they typically get paid. And then you can share with them. We can typically take a certain amount for a deposit and then set up payments on your payday or near your payday so that it's the easiest for you and your family to afford this representation. So typically we need X deposit and Y payments per week. Then ask the question, does that work for you? What can you do for a deposit today? What's workable in your budget for you and your family? Because the best payment arrangements are the payment arrangements that are going to be met, that the client is able to keep. So if we want to make sure we're setting up a payment arrangement that they will be able to make week after week or biweekly or month after month, it's imperative that we talk to them about what's possible for them. And then as attorneys, we need to be innovative. This is part of the FAIR acronym that we have, innovative representation. Be innovative about how you are approaching the client. Don't just offer full representation. If that, say, well, if you can't afford me to represent you for the whole thing, then I'm just not going to be able to help you. Let's be creative about how we can find a way to help this client. And in doing that, we can offer limited scope services that are less expensive on the front end for the client, something that they might be able to afford at this point, and then have an opportunity to move forward in different phases of the litigation, all based on limited scope. Our rules allow limited scope, and it really just makes sense that we would consider that part of our offerings because that's where the clients are. And we need to meet the clients where the clients are. So that is one of the primary focuses of a wonderful and good, successful consultation. And so to get into the more detail about the successful consultation, and if you work with us here at Access Legal, you'll have opportunity to have guides for consultations that would be really helpful to you. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Dave for him to walk through the steps for a successful consultation.
Yep. This is where if you have a pen and paper, you might want to jot down these notes because we are going to go through, like as Mr. Bogate was saying at the very beginning, this fair practice model has been tested with over 4,000 attorneys over the last 20 years. We worked one-on-one with every single one of the attorneys and firms we've worked with across, 12 different practice areas with, 2 million clients, and the guides or the scripts that we've developed. And some of the kind of key elements of a successful consultation thread themselves across some of the most successful fair practice access attorneys we work with all across the country. And so this has been the themes that we've seen in terms of what they make sure that they do on each consultation. And one kind of leads to the next. And so we're going to be going through that in a brief overview. We're going to give as much detail as we can with the time we have here on this workshop. But there is opportunities for us to dive in deeper for this, both in terms of if you want to talk to us directly, and also on our next workshop, we'll be going into some very specific practice areas and walking through how this is done in a couple example areas. So first step is, as Mrs. Johnson said, is the introduction, and then most importantly, to listen to the client. This is the thing that I think, especially when we first start working with attorneys, often this is the step that's quite often skipped. I mean, for attorneys that have been doing this for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, in the first, 30 seconds to a minute, you probably already have a sense for like what's going on and what you need to do and what you need to charge and how to get this thing done and what the outcomes are going to be, right? All that stuff's already probably there at the forefront of your mind. But in many ways, as we were talking about the client-centered focus of practice, the most important thing we need to focus on is building trust and a relationship. And that needs to come first. We have to also remember that this is the very first time that the client has ever dealt with something like this, most often. And so, it's really important that they have an opportunity to share what's going on with their case, talk about what's been happening, and then for you to really listen and kind of hear them out for, at least a few minutes, right? 2-3 minutes. We're not talking about, sitting on the phone with them for half an hour while they tell their whole story, but, you'd be amazed by how many attorneys will cut in after just, 10, 15, 20 seconds. So give them that little bit of time to kind of share. And then from there, because the listening and engaging is what builds trust. It's the best way to build trust and rapport with your client. From there, then you can ask your clarifying questions. This is typically what you would see in an intake questionnaire that you would often have. So these are some of the things when I'm doing the introduction. A couple clarifying questions we can quickly ask. Good time to talk. You got something to write with? Do you have an attorney? Any upcoming court dates? These would be something that you may want to address right on the outset. And then, okay, tell me a little bit of what's going on. Open-ended questions. Let them just to start share your case, share about what's going on in their legal matter and with their case. And then, of course, the three most important words at the bottom there: listen, listen, listen. Right? 2 ears, 1 mouth. Really give them an opportunity to take full advantage of both of those ears you have, and that's going to really help the client feel heard. Right. So then once that step is complete, then we're going to do our clarifying questions, to help guide the question. This would be typically for the type of questions you have in your intake questionnaire. So, for example, for a family law case, okay, the children are involved, how old are they and where do they live? How far is that from you? How long you've been separated from your ex? Are there any custody or visitation orders in place? Is child support being paid yet? Okay, what is your monthly income? What is their monthly income? Okay, have any paperwork been filed with the court yet? Okay, just getting the gist of, in the context of family law, are we establishing, modifying, or enforcing a custody, visitation, or support order? Is this a divorce matter? Is it adoption, third party? What's the nature of the situation that we're dealing with in this case? And try to get an overview of exactly what needs to get done, right? So those are the clarifying questions. They're going to help you better understand what they need help with. And then from there, we want to find out what the client's primary goal is. This is also a question that is very often skipped, which is once the client has described the problem, asking him a question like, look, if you could have this custody, this divorce, this criminal situation turn out exactly the way you want, what would you like to see happen? Or in the context of a criminal case, what do you want to make sure doesn't happen? Right? What keeps you up at night? Because of course, if you ask someone that has facing criminal charge, the first thing you want to do is have them all dropped, right? But there might also want to ask a question that says, what do you want to make sure doesn't happen? Well, I really can't lose my license, commercial driver, or I really can't go to jail, or I don't, there's something very specific that may be most concerned about, or in a case of a divorce or custody case, I want physical custody of the kids. I want to make sure there's a visitation order so that they can't just show up whenever they want. And that really gives the client the opportunity to share what is that they want. And when you listen, you repeat that back to them, the client now knows that exactly what's going on. You have this kind of beautiful meeting of the minds in terms of, okay, we both know exactly what needs to get done. And then it creates this natural transition. Okay, now let's start talking about the solution. Let's start talking about what we need to do to get this thing done. Right. And it really empowers that client to have a say, to know that, hey, this is what I want to do. This is my goal, and that you're there to support them in that. And it sets the direction in terms of what the aims are for the working relationship. All right. So from there, then we're talking a little bit about the next steps and talking through the scope of work. The difference between enrollment consultation versus legal consultation is very important, which has to do with, at this point, we're talking about what are some of the next things that need to get done, as opposed to here's the exact legal strategy, here's what we're going to file and so forth. But it's what are the next steps in your case, and what are the kinds of things that are going to need to get done for this kind of legal matter. And then also you can talk to them a little bit about the scope of the way in which we can do this. I can handle this case from start to finish, or we can, handle parts of this matter initially, and then you can handle parts on your own. You can start to explore possibilities with them. One of the key components here is we use, okay, let's talk about what we need to do next year. The first thing we need to do is we need to file this, and we're going to need to get in front of the court. And if you can demonstrate local knowledge, what circuit is this going to be in front? It's probably going to be in front of this judge, and this is kind of the things we need to present. But we're using we and us as the language of like, we're working here as a team, and I'm your attorney, and we're moving forward. This kind of this is what you typically call active voice. Right? Active voice meaning, okay, here's the next steps that we need to take to move this forward, as opposed to passive or hypothetical, which is, if you were to hire me, then this is what we would do, right? It's kind of, you're already kind of assuming that the client's going to hire you from there, and you just describe what those next steps are going to look like. And then from there, we want to do a comparison between, here's the traditional model versus here's, how we operate differently. And that sets you apart. Typically, have you talked to any attorneys about your situation? Would be a good question to ask. And say, well, and if they haven't, You might describe, well, most attorneys, they typically charge, $5,000 to $10,000 to get started on a typical family law case. We're a lot different here. We allow clients to start with a much lower initial access starting point, and then we set up a payment plan that's workable for your budget. That way you can get the representation you're needing in a way that's not going to break the bank. And they're like, wow, people really respond to that, because you're also giving them some education about, here's what it normally costs, here's how it typically works, if they don't already understand that, so that then when you do present the fair practice model in the way that you offer, they have a clear perception of the value of what it is that you're delivering to them. And again, there's that focus on that flexibility and affordability. And when you present the full representation option, which we'll talk about here in a quote, then if they aren't in a position to be able to afford that, we can waterfall down. We call it waterfall because you go from one level of service, full service, then you can offer the next level down, which means if they can't afford the full service for full representation, they're better to have some help rather than no help at all. So most of our attorneys will typically start with full representation on automated recurring billing payments, because for most clients, that's what they want. They want to have an attorney representing them in their case from start to finish. That's what most people want. So we kind of call that leading with what they need. But the most important difference here is that it's compelling, meaning that the quote is compelling in the sense that it's much more possible for the client to afford you because of the access point. And it's also different because it combines both the starting fee and a discussion of the payment plan. So the client has a very clear sense from the outset of exactly what they're going to need to pay from that point forward for the representation, right? So, for example, let's take a family law case, like a custody matter where you're going to, under a fair practice model, we might start with $1,500 and then ask for $250. So we typically ask for $1,500 to get started and then $250 every other week from there. Does that work for you? And you'll notice here in the quote that we're providing three things. We have the initial deposit amount, which is typically for full representation under the fair practice model. For most of our attorneys, it's going to range somewhere between $1,500 to $2,500, unless, of course, there's a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done. They just got served paperwork, or they have a trial coming up soon. There's certainly exceptions. Everything we do on an intake standpoint creates an estimate. But in general, this is typically what most of our fair practice attorneys will start on, is in that range. And then second thing, you also are quoting with the weekly or biweekly payment plan, right? And then if there's a flat fee quote, if it's criminal, estate, where you're offering a flat fee, then you also will have the flat fee from there, right? So the quote contains the entire amount, both in terms of the starting point and the actual payment plan they're going to be paying. And then if they cannot afford, let's say the $250 or $350 every couple of weeks, or they can't afford the initial deposit and they need to get work done, that doesn't mean we can't help them. It just means they cannot afford that full scope of service. And so then this is where we can waterfall down to the next affordable scope, because as we all believe here at Access Legal, as well as most bar associations and judges, those clients are in a much better position having some help from an attorney rather than no help at all. And so that's where we can offer limited scope, as typically as a flat fee. And again, with all the tools that are available from 8 My Case to deliver services and get the documents drafted in less time than ever, it makes the efficiencies of these limited scope services very valuable. Typically, the effective hourly rate could be $500 an hour or more. In those cases, you could take as little as $500 to $1,000 down, and payments as low as $100 a week. And so, for our fair practice attorneys, they have a starting option at $2,500, $2,000, $1,500, $1,000, and $500 in the areas where limited scope is available. So as long as folks have something available to move forward, they're in a position where that client is retaining services, getting legal help, and they're also generating some revenue from that client. And then here's the real, big picture element of this is we found that limited scope, we call it kind of the gateway to additional service, because we found that 3/4 of the clients that start with limited scope will end up hiring the attorney for additional services, if not transitioning for full representation from there. So by getting that relationship started with a small service or initial service, those relationships will naturally evolve from there. Okay. And then lastly of all, of course, most importantly, once you've determined that scope, set those fees, you want to go ahead and process that payment for the initial deposit, set up the recurring payment plan, and then send that retainer agreement ideally in real time, and then communicate the next steps and schedule a call. And in real time is one of the key components of this for sure. It's just like you're sitting across from them at the office you might be on the phone with them, but imagine they're right there. You want to see if you can get all those different elements done in real time. And one of the things that's beautiful about AD in my case is you have the ability to create these fee agreements and send them, very, very efficiently, very effectively. And then the kind of combination of these lower access point, the payment plans, the waterfall, and then being able to do these enrollments in real time is what leads to our fair practice attorneys being able to retain, 3 to 4 times as many clients. So with that, Max is going to now give you guys an example of, through the ADMI class platform, how you can seamlessly enroll that client, process that payment, and then get that fee agreement sent out.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dave. Give me 1 second as I start sharing my screen here. But continuing on from the example from earlier, using the Access Legal integration where your Access Legal leads or potential new clients will flow into this little online leads portion right here. In this example, we have Emily already as that new lead in the status here directly. And let's say we're actually giving Emily a call. We want to run through the scope of like what the case entails and really discuss the best payment options that would work for her specific case here. And now on that live call, we actually want to go ahead and request that initial payment. So that's something under the billing tab on that potential new client. All we have to do is hit add new and then request funds. So in this example, it would be that initial 1,500. And here we can select if that's something you would take into trust or operating. And again, live on that call, we'd be able to edit the subject line, email that is coming in, and actually let Emily know, okay, here's an email request coming in. If you could go ahead, complete payment. This will then automatically update and reflect once the payment has been made. And this is where right up top here on this add new item button, we can click schedule payment. Now select Emily directly from our system because she's already in here through the integration with Access Legal. Mm-hmm. Again, whether that's going into trust or operating, we can specify directly here. And in this example, let's say it's going to be 250, and that's going to be happening. It could be weekly, it could be twice a month here. In this example, let's say we're going to start in March and then do the 2nd and the 4th Friday of that specific month. Mm-hmm. And here we can also set based on the actual duration. Do we want to have it until you manually stop this? Are there a specific number of payments that are required here? A certain end date depending on the actual life cycle of that specific case, or even once a certain amount is reached, if maybe you have a flat fee in place there. The benefit here also, once the initial deposit had already been made, the LawPay system, which is essentially the payment processing working in the ADMI case environment, would automatically populate that credit card number here as well. So we could actually just go ahead, create that schedule. And this is all something that could happen live on that call. So you're not having to reach back out after that and just making that process as efficiently as possible. Now, once that's all set up, under the documents here is where you would be able to set up that specific fee agreement. So really based on things like name, address, anything that you would typically populate in that, we can now set up a document template specifically for that agreement. This example would use myself as the attorney that's referenced on this document. And we can now label that how we'd like, even if you wanted to tag or add a description in there. And this is something that once completed would look like this here. It could be based on your letterhead, all your formatting is in here. And here we actually have specified that $1,500 up front and then the recurring biweekly payments of $250. Now, last thing we need here is just a signature, which within ADMI case, all we have to do is navigate to this little fountain pen icon at the next to the document here and specify if you or you're actually collecting signature for someone else. Here we can also add, if required, additional signers, if it needs a counter signature, or if you're actually looking at a drawn signature. And similar to any e-signature service you might have used in the past, this is where we can now add different boxes and fields for things like signature. You might need initials or a date on there as well. We'll just scroll down to the bottom here where we already have that signature in place. If there were multiple signers, you would be able to select them through the drop down here. And all this is built into the MyCase platform. It's not requiring additional subscription, and you have unlimited e-signatures available however you'd like to use them. Once everything is completed, you just hit save and continue. We can now edit the actual subject line and the email. And again, this can be sent out directly while you're on that call with a potential new client. It will automatically update once they make signature. And if you have more boilerplate type of agreements where the signature field is typically always on that same part of that specific document, you don't necessarily want to add it every single time. We also have what we call e-signature templates. So it would even speed that process up even more. But now once that signature is completed, you're on the call with the client. So we would now actively click convert to case, add any additional information here about the client details. You could even set if it's hourly, flat fee billing, and who within the firm would be assigned to the specific matter. And now, once that is all complete, that's how they become an active case and client in your system. And from there, you can start working that case immediately once you jump off the phone call with them, or you maybe reach out to another potential new client to then get them set up in a similar fashion here. But this way, you and your firm are really utilizing technology to your own efficiency and making the most out of the time with the client as well. That was everything on my end here, and I'll pass it back to you, Dave, from here.
It's just so amazing. I mean, this is one of the things we love about working with ADM My Cases. That made that so easy. I mean, I think we just, processed a payment, set up the scheduled payments, which again, these tools weren't even available 10 years ago. These automated recurring payments, ADM LawPay was the pioneers in that regard to be able to put in a trust accounting or operating. And so to have this, and then be able to do the intake form that quickly in real time while you're on, I mean, it's no wonder that a lot of attorneys aren't really used to doing the enrollment over the phone in real time with the digital signature because you don't have these tools at their fingertips. So it's just amazing to see all of this under one roof. I mean, it's one of the things that makes this partnership and the integration is you get the clients coming in, you're leading with the fair practice model, and then you have the tools right there to complete the enrollments. Those intake forms from that point forward just go populate right in the document. So just really great to see all these tools available to all of you in your fingertips to make all of this happen. So thanks, Max, for showcasing that. And so obviously we've been covering a lot of information on this workshop here in terms of how to make this fair practice model work, how to do the consultations. None of us would expect you to learn this overnight. And so this is why we have success attorneys at Access Legal. We have an attorney, these are all attorneys that work in our office and they will work with you on a dedicated one-to-one fashion to make sure you're kind of learning how to do these consultations, how to work with these tools, how to do the scheduled payments, how to communicate to clients, also for your specific practice area, whether it be bankruptcy. These are all the practice areas that we work in. And so just take a look at the screen, give it a quick scroll through. And if you provide services in any of these practice areas, we can start delivering you conversation verified clients that are in the specific jurisdiction and area of law that you provide services in. It's really easy for us to get started to explore working together. You can talk to our team. Someone had asked, how many attorneys do you have in each specific region? Lots, but every conversation verified client that we bring in is exclusive. That means, one client to one attorney every single time. So there's no exclusive regions. It's, every lead you get from us is just for you. And then real time, no sign up fees deposit, no long-term contract. And with My Case and ADM, we have what we call the My Case guarantee, which means you are guaranteed to generate a profit from your first 20 potential clients from Access Legal, or we'll credit the difference. It's one of the commitments we made with them to make sure that anyone has a kind of a no-risk opportunity to be able to explore both delivering the fair practice model as well as exploring having these clients delivered to your firm. So with that, for those of you that would like to explore working with Access Legal or with ADM My Case, if you're not already taking advantage of ADM My Case's platform, I would strongly encourage you to do so. Whether you're working with or not, the efficiencies there and all of the tools they have under that one single platform are very, very powerful for this modern era. So there's the QR code for ADM My Case. Here you have a QR code for Access Legal where you'll have an opportunity to schedule a call with one of our resource agents. They can answer your questions, kind of walk you through the fair practice model in more detail for your specific practice area, talk to you about the clients that we have available for your area, and give you an opportunity to explore working together. So with that, I'm very thankful for for Max and for James and Jen and Grant, for everyone being here today to share this, powerful integration, and most importantly, kind of giving you all of the tools, the technology that you need as an attorney in this modern era to truly thrive by enabling you to position yourself to offer services in a much more attractive and compelling way for a huge market of clients that are, underserved right now, but absolutely, can't afford to retain services of an attorney. And then lastly, before we wrap, we'll have some time here for Q&A for those of you that want to hang in. This is the second episode of a three episode series, a workshop. So we'll be having the third and final episode, which is the fair practice in real life, which is, as we talked about earlier, practice area applications, how to build a consistent flow of paying clients for some very specific practice areas like bankruptcy or family law, and kind of walking through how you can combine the enrollment strategies we've talked about, as well as the intake and document automation, to actually have 80% of the work already completed from the time you've enrolled that client. So we'll be kind of getting into the more granular, specific areas of practice to see how this whole workflow looks. So if you haven't already registered for that webinar, that's going to be on the 5th of March at 10 a.m. Pacific. Here's the QR code to get registered for that webinar. So thank you, everyone, for being a part of this workshop and for taking good notes, and to everyone else that's been presented here as well. So with that, we will leave it open for some Q&A. I think there's been some questions in the chat, so we can attend to those. And if you have any other questions you would like to ask, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll hang in, get those answered. We will also be sending out a recording of this webinar here shortly after the completion. Someone want to take a look at the questions and see if we can get a couple answers?
Yeah, I'll gladly jump in with this first one. I've been trying to answer some of you just within the chat, some easier kind of low-hanging fruit that we could throw in there, but obviously there's some more things that require more context that we'd be happy to get into now. So the first question that was put out there was from Michael Maloney. How does automated payment plans work with the LEDES requirements? I don't work with this system very much. I am familiar with it. LEDES stands for the Legal Electronic Data Exchange Standard, and it's a system, from what I understand, that's typically used when you're dealing with a corporate client. So I think it's really important to start with that context and remember that what the problem, like I kind of said in the preface to my summary, it's important to remember the job that we're trying to accomplish, the problem we're trying to solve for with a lot of these tools and strategies, and that is lack of access to large resources and upfront sums of money, right? And the income demographics vet that out, but the income demographics are obviously set toward private citizens and residents. And there's a reason why we don't talk about personal injury and med mal cases in here, because typically those are contingent fees. And so access to the lawyer isn't actually a challenge, right? All they hear on TV is like, hey, no money until we get money for you. And most people are like, all right, cool. We kind of have the same issue with corporate clients where they don't have an issue paying their bill. They know they need their lawyer. They know that your terms are set the way they are. That being said, what I would say with my understanding of this system and how it works, it's mostly a reporting mechanism, right? And it's meant to make all of this more efficient. If you're being very transparent about how you're collecting money, I don't see how being bound by that auditing system would actually preclude you from following this model and offering these services. In fact, from a selling perspective, because a lot of this is designed to give you a competitive advantage. Everyone is used to the traditional model. It is really financially burdensome. And so even in a business capacity, if you can go to the business and say, hey, yeah, you're likely looking at $25,000 in legal fees this year. That's what it's been on average for the last 3 or 4 years. But we can come up with a relationship where you pay $2,000 a month as opposed to $25,000 on January 1st. And a lot of companies would love the opportunity to free up that capital for other projects that they can invest in that are money making, instead of just, as we all know, like, a lawyer, legal fees, as necessary as they are, companies view them as loss leaders and just expense items. So if you can stretch that out and make your services and your fee more palatable and more budgetable for that company, I still think this all fits very neatly into there. The reason we don't cover it a lot is, again, corporations don't have a big access to justice issue. Corporate attorneys and firms aren't seeing that business dry up. But within the context of this, if you want to make yourself more competitive and position yourself to be more competitive in those spaces, offering to stretch that money out for that company is a really easy place to start. And as long as you're being transparent about that on the front end, I don't think the standard here is affected by the fact that you're collecting the money over 12 months as opposed to just all at once. So I hope that answers that particular question in enough detail to for that one.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I see a couple of people had asked about the cost of Access Legal. We deliver each potential client as a flat fee per potential client, and the fees will range somewhere between $55 all the way up to $350, depending on the practice area and the costs associated with generating each of those potential clients. And so easiest way, just a little bit more about that, is to use the QR code to schedule a call with our team, and we'll be able to talk about the specific costs for each potential client, as well as the expected conversion rate and average customer value for the specific practice area that you serve. And someone else asked about the first recording. I think we can work with the ADM MyCase team to send out the recording of the first one also to the registrants of the second one too. So we'll be happy to do that as well. So if you weren't, for whatever, you weren't registered for the first one, we'll send out the recording for both, so you can watch the ADM MyCase platform that enable the fair practice model.
And Dave, I have a meeting. Regardless, if you want to answer Attorney Frame's question for the benefit of the group, that would be great. And then I will
Sure.
gladly answer Attorney Frazier's question about the hourly rate for the attorney.
Yeah, so Karen had asked, how do you market Access Legal to consumers? What's your go-to-market strategy? The vast majority of clients come through the Access Legal platform through search marketing. And the reason for that is because that's the highest, that client is the most likely to want to hire an attorney right then and there because they have search intent. They're saying, I'm looking for a family law attorney in this region. And so, that's what we've kind of done well for many, many, many years, just through search marketing. But we also do social media. We also provide education via videos and kind of build, kind of following that way. And then, of course, every time a potential client, sees an ad or some of our content, they then land on a page that has the conversation intake system. And then we engage in that conversation with each client to make sure that we understand the practice area they're needing help with, the jurisdiction, asking those prompting questions about the jurisdiction, and then also setting a price expectation for that client, typical range for family law or divorce, a criminal case or DUI. And some of those fees are a little bit different as well, depending on what the average starting cost is going to be. So that by the time you're receiving that potential client in your ADM MyCase account or directly, they should already have a good expectation of what those starting costs are going to be. And then again, that's where the consultation and some of the things we've talked about in this workshop, really come into play in terms of, optimizing your approach on those consultations to, get those folks enrolling your services consistently and using the tools that ADM MyCase has available to, get that enrollment taken care of seamlessly in real time.
Great, thank you. And to answer Ms. Frazier's question, is the initial deposit amount based on the attorney's hourly rate? This is one of those times where I would say, this answer could be 30 minutes long. I strongly encourage you to book an appointment with us. We love talking about these things in the context of the actual lawyer's experience, their firm, their goals. From a general perspective, what we're trying to do is meld we're trying to get a meeting of the minds here. We're trying to meet the clients where they are while protecting your interests. So what typically happens is the initial deposit is a reflection of time, right? So yeah, if you charge, $400 an hour, you might need to charge $2,000, $2,500, $2,400 on the front end because you're anticipating that, you're going to need 5, 6 hours of initial time to get their case up and running. So sometimes that's a reflection of the attorney's hourly rate. Sometimes it's a reflection of the procedures. Sometimes you're not offering it based on your hourly rate. You're offering it based on your jurisdiction's procedural rules. So like in my jurisdiction, I'm a family law attorney. I typically offer flat fees up until the judicial conciliation. We have like 3 rounds of mediation. Most custody and divorce cases don't go to trial. And so I offer flat fees because it's very predictable for me to get there. If I were doing it on an hourly basis, yes, I would need to take enough money up front to make sure I could just get through that initial filing service, maybe the first mediation phase. But then there's the understanding, and it's about releasing this fear that we're not going to get paid, because that's where all of this comes from, the need to be paid up front. No one would be driving a vehicle or living in a home if they weren't able to keep their payments and treat that with responsibility and high priority. So I always remind attorneys, $250 every 2 weeks is $6,000 a year. So if you're dealing with a custody case that is, 12, 18, 24 months long, typically to resolve, you're now looking at, if you're on 250 every 2 weeks on their payday, you're now looking at $6,000 in 12 months, $9,000 in 18, 12,000 in 24, right? So even though you might do work that month and now it's like, ooh, the client's behind, I've done $3,500 worth of work, you're going to have 4 months of just idleness, or 6 months, or 8 sometimes if things get continued. So that's why I say definitely, take the time to book a call with us if you're interested in how this applies to your firm and in your jurisdiction, because it's a very intercomplicated thing. This isn't just like a slap a sticker on it and say the same thing to every client. We're problem solvers. This is about solving that money problem and then utilizing all of these tools at your disposal to be able to process that client. And actually, you collect the money at a 90% clip. You're able to hire, and help more people. So multifaceted question, but yes, in some ways it's related to your hourly, but it's more just kind of a strategic approach to the timeline of the case.
Yeah. And it varies a lot by practice area as well. Every practice
Very
area
much so.
has a fair practice business model and a
Great
specific
point.
strategy by which you enroll that client. It's different for DUI, for criminal, for family law. I mean, for criminal, typically, starting point's going to be 1,500 to 2,500, depending. Usually, it's 20 to 25% down. For bankruptcy, our attorneys are typically taking as little as $100 down, right? 150, 250, and then just doing the recurring payments. They don't file the bankruptcy until the balance is paid. But just getting somebody started with what they can do today is what someone that's going bankrupt needs as that starting point. So again, the model itself, and then also how that's communicated in the consultation and what people need to get started to, what attorneys will typically take as a starting point, varies quite a bit by practice area. And so that's where, our team is really integral to making sure that, we kind of get you fully up to speed with exactly how to deliver the fair practice model for the specific practice area that you are in. All right. Any other questions at the bottom since we've been rolling? Otherwise, we can wrap.
I think this one might be for Max, or the My Case team. What are the vertical lines on the case fields? I think when you were showing.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get a better understanding what exact vertical lines were meant there. Kelly, not sure if you're still online to elaborate a bit more, but if not, we can take that one offline as well.
Yeah, maybe just schedule a call with them and they'll walk you through. This is obviously an expedited demo. There's so many more tools and features available in ADM ICAS even for that specific element. So that'd probably be a good time because the ADM ICAS will give you a full demo when you get a chance to connect with them. Karen Freeman asked, do you get 8 a.m. with signing up with Access Legal? They are separate fees. for the ADM MyCase platform, we have the integration built in so that you can now have your potential clients with Access Legal delivered in real time through ADM MyCase. But ADM MyCase for their set of services and their platform is one specific fee, depending on the level of service and amount of access that you want to have. And then Access Legal has a separate fee for each potential client we deliver. Yep. And we just saw Karen, he's booked an appointment. We'll look forward to filling in more of these details. To clarify, the Access Legal fees are only applicable if the lead is converters, or a separate fee as well. The Access Legal fee is applicable for each potential client we send. That's because it's a pay per lead model. That's the, with ethics of advertising, how it has to be. It can't be just when clients retain. And so we set the fees so that, with a typical conversion rate, as well as relative to the typical cost to generate these potential clients, the cost of acquisition with the conversion rate factored in is still such that our attorneys should be seeing potentially a 5 to 10x return on investment. Is kind of what we shoot for. About for every dollar you spend in advertising, you're seeing 5 to 10. So you're investing 5,000, you're seeing 20 to 30. So 20 to 50. So that's how it's set up. And again, for the specific practice area that you serve, when you talk to one of our enrollment agents, they can tell you exactly what the fee per potential client is, what the expected conversion rate is, and therefore what you can expect as your what we call the cost of acquisition. So, for example, on a DUI case, how many leads does it typically take to convert that into a paying client? How much is the cost for a potential client, and therefore what you can expect from the cost of acquisition relative to what you charge for on average for DUIs, and you can kind of calculate your expected profit from there. Right. So I think been hanging in to ask a lot of questions. These are great. Thank you so much for participating and engaging. We're obviously really excited about integration of these platforms and what this enables for all of you in your practices. We can't be more kind of clear and direct about how important it is nowadays that you are leveraging technology to position your firm to offer compelling services to compete in the legal market. AI is not going anywhere, and it's available both to experienced attorneys. It's also going to be available to attorneys coming straight out of law school that are very eager to get that work, as well as the tools are available to clients as well. So it's a very competitive landscape. It's getting more competitive, and so having these tools at your fingertips is very, very essential for you to be able to make sure that you're positioning your firm to thrive. And so very pleased to be working alongside AMICAS to make all that possible for you. So thanks again for everyone for being a part of this workshop, and we will see you on the next one on the 5th of March. I'll share that QR code one more time here in case you hadn't got registered. That is the registration for the next workshop in the series. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you on the next one.